Hi, I'm Rory from Powerballs.com, and today I'd like to give you a quick tutorial on how to open and clean your 280Hz Powerball model series. From time to time, our customers contact us and they tell us that, well, I was using my Powerball yesterday and it was perfect, but today, no matter how I spin it, it just won't gather speed. It dies after 20 seconds. And I haven't done anything to it. It's only a couple of days old, or it could be 5 years old. The point is that something gets inside in the Powerball and it contaminates that perfect frictional relationship between the rotor support band that surrounds the rotor and the rings inside. And you need to learn how to open the Powerball and clean it. Because, as I say to you, it can happen literally on day one, or it can happen 5 years down the road. These products are guaranteed to last for a long, long time. The parts that we use, the components and the materials we use are really, really high quality plastics, and 20 million revolutions. You'll see no wear and tear in this as long as your technique is correct. But you could have finger balm or hand oil or whatever on your fingers, and it doesn't take very much to get in there and to disrupt that friction. And I don't know if it's the massage balm or if it's sort of muscle relief balm. We sell a lot of these products for rehabilitation purposes. I don't know what causes it. I can't tell you because, as I say, the amounts that get in there are so small. But I can say to you that our customers have sent back brand new Powerballs, or Powerballs which are not that old. We've opened them. We've followed the process that I'm going to show you in this video, cleaned them properly, and the Powerballs are perfect. This Powerball, as I say, this model that we're going to clean is one of those. It's actually a ball that when you spin it, it doesn't have that satisfying bite that a Powerball has. You know, that lovely friction that it generates basically. So by the time I'm finished cleaning it, I'm expecting that this Powerball will be perfect again. So without further ado, let's go into the cleaning process and the opening process. To do this, we're going to need the following items. Very basic actually. Some tissue paper or toilet paper. Some isopropyl alcohol. Now that's an important one, you'll see as we go through this. Isopropyl alcohol is requirement. Or very pure alcohol if you can't get your hands on isopropyl. And a screwdriver which has a little Phillips star head and a little flat head there. So, process. Pull off the grip band. No big deal there, put that to one side. Now, engaging the little star head screwdriver, you'll see that there are 3 little screws on the circumference there. It's very straightforward. Unscrew those little chaps. Make sure they don't fall and go away on you. Tiny little things that they are. Now, very important that before you start this process, you have your hands squeaky clean. I'm talking about squeaky clean. Scrub them twice if you must. Just get them as clean as a whistle. Because what you're going to be doing here is risking contaminating the innards, and again I'll explain that as we go through. So we have the 3 screws out. Now you can see there's a sort of a little kind of a tab and a slot arrangement going on here. There are several of them going the whole way around, 2 in each third. Total of 6 of them. All you're doing is you're getting your little flat blade screwdriver to lift. You can see that? To lift the actual tabs. Now, make sure you put it into the right spot, because you can see we have our patented shell here, which is a sort of a shock absorber. You don't want to be putting a screwdriver into that. You want to be just putting it in here, lifting the actual, this part of the shell away from the little tab. Same on this. Just catch it and lift it up. And you'll see that the actual shell is starting to come apart at this point itself. And just do the final one. Okay, now, so here's where the fun starts. Now you lift carefully, making sure not to touch any of the inside with your fingers. So now we're left with this. So at no point do I want you touching any of the internal parts with your fingertips. Doesn't matter how clean they are, you don't touch. What you do is you get your roll of toilet paper and you get your isopropyl alcohol handy. Let's get that sorted there. Now, okay, you can touch the actual, you can take the rotor with your fingers, gingerly. Take the rotor, don't touch any of the rings. Just take it on both sides here and lift it out. Now, you'll see that there's one of the rings has come with it. And I'll show you that in a second. Actually, what you're just going to do is just turn that upside down. There's the ring coming off of there. That's the outer ring. It belongs in the top part of the shell. So take the rotor and put that to one side for the time being, but do not touch this with your finger, the actual white support band. We'll deal with that in a second. Now, what you're going to do is this. Before I go any further. Okay, here's the other part, the other half of the shell. Now, there looks as if there's nothing in there, that it's just a bit of a shell, but in fact, there is the opposite of this chap, the opposite of that is sitting in here, and it's clear plastic. Now, if you look, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it's in there. It's a separate ring. It's not part of the shell. And you'd be forgiven for thinking it's part of the shell, but it's not. It's a separate piece entirely. Now, if you look closely, if you turn it around in your hand there, and you look closely, you'll see that there is a little notch in there. Now, it's actually quite hard to see in this light, but there is a small little notch, a little hole, as it were, into which you can insert your little screwdriver. Now I have just a little bit here, but naturally you have a full-size screwdriver there in your hand. So make sure, what is that? That's about 3 millimeters, I suppose. The notch isn't going to be picked up by the camera, but it's in there. And if you just gently bring your sort of tip around, you'll find, oops, there it is. You'll find it. I suppose, is there a guide? There isn't really a guide. There's no place that I can actually tell you that it is. You're just going to have to find it. But you'll see it in there. It's kind of obvious once you look closely. So get your screwdriver and pop. You just get it and lift it, and up she pops. No rocket science to that there. It should come up easily. Just literally get your screwdriver in and you... making sure I'm getting this on camera. Yes, sir. Now the ring is... You can actually see it here. I'm not going to touch it with my fingers. I'm going to take it with a piece of tissue. This is really important. You do not touch these with your fingers. You always hold them with the piece of tissue. You can see the notch there. Are you picking it up in the camera, I wonder? I don't want to sort of get too close because it'll probably get blurred if I do that. I don't want to be losing the sharpness of this. Anyway, it's there. It's a little cut in the notch, or in the ring, and that allows you to prise it up. So we now have the rotor, and we have the 2 rings. And so those are the actual 3 parts that you need to clean. Now, actually you need 2 pieces of toilet paper, tissue paper, whatever it is you're going to be using. One you're going to liberally soak with the isopropyl alcohol, and 2 you're going to use to pick up the rings. So at no time am I touching any of these rings with my fingers. I'm literally holding the ring with the one part of toilet paper, and the other I'm scrubbing the component with. So I'm just working my way around, entirely covering the ring with the actual isopropyl. Now the isopropyl, of course, since it's pure alcohol, will start evaporating quite quickly. So you might need to add another bit. But what I would like to do, just for a belt and braces approach, is I like to go around it once or twice with the first piece. Now really dig your nails in there, because you'll see that when you have this ring in your hand, it's not just a flat ring. It's actually a notched, there's a kind of a T shape on the outer side of the ring. So you gotta get your fingernails, and you gotta really make sure that you're cleaning every aspect of that ring. You're not going to break it now. Of course, you start flexing it, it might break, but just all I'm doing is going around here, so there's no real risk of damaging the ring. Don't put too much pressure on it, don't want to deform the ring, just go around with it. But make sure you never touch the ring with your fingers. So I'll discard that first piece, and again for the belt and braces, we'll go again with some more isopropyl, another piece of tissue, still holding it with the original piece. We clean it a second time. Nothing like doing the job right, I guess. Ironically, I've done this in the past where I only cleaned it once. And I put the ball back together and it still didn't sort the problem out. And the problem, of course, is that your Powerball won't spin properly. Your lovely new Powerball has suddenly died. You can wind it up, you can have the best technique, but it just isn't catching inside. What happens is some contamination, tiny bit of contamination, whether it's from moisturizer, hand oil, something gets onto the rings inside and it disrupts that perfect frictional relationship between the rotor support band and these guys, the upper and lower rings, the cavity rings we call them. When that happens, your Powerball is goosed. It doesn't actually doesn't spin anymore. You can't just, there's no friction, and no matter what you do, and no matter how good your technique, it just dies. And so what you got to do is you got to do this. You got to open it all up. You got to give it a good scrubbing inside with the alcohol. So that is well cleaned. But if you really want to do it right, you'll take a fresh piece and you'll dry off the alcohol, any residue that may exist on the ring. You're just getting rid of it all and making sure again you're digging the fingers in there into the groove. Get your nails in there and just really clean it, because so you have a nice perfectly clean ring. So once I have that done, I am going to, still holding it with the tissue, I'm going to apply it back in. I'm never going to touch that ring with my fingers. Now, it's sitting in there in the shell. I'm going to use 2 pieces of tissue. You can hear it clicking into place there maybe. I'm just pushing it down all the way around. And she gets in there nicely. Now look, there's one other thing here. There's a second reason why you might want to open your Powerball and clean it. These products are pretty much guaranteed to last forever, because as I say, the actual components that we use are very high quality plastics and they don't wear down. You can get 20 million revolutions on this. We've tested it with 0 wear. So these things will stay going forever as long as your technique is right. You keep the ball firmly in your hand as you're spinning it. But whilst there is a drop resistant shell here, you can see these little slots basically. You can see them in there. Whilst there's a drop resistant shell, you can actually see, I don't know if you can see there, I haven't put that in properly. I need to go and press that down a small bit. If you drop it very hard onto a very hard surface, you could, in theory, the metallic tip here of the axle can press down very hard in this polycarbonate ring and can put a tiny little mark and a little impression on it. In which case, the ball will make a slight knocking noise as it's spinning around. As I'm talking, I'm just going to clean the second ring, do the same process, the white ring here. Okay, belt and braces. We're going to do it twice. So first of all, just give it a quick little wipe down before we apply a fresh piece of tissue. Toilet roll is cheap. Your Powerball is not cheap. Your Powerball is a wonderful piece of intricate machinery and it needs to be treated accordingly. So liberal use of the toilet paper and the alcohol. So you drop your Powerball, the heavy metal rotor makes an impression on one of the cavity rings, depending on whether it's fallen up or down, and your Powerball makes a knocking noise as it goes around. Well, what's happened is it's put a little rut on the hard plastic here, and every time the axle meets it makes a kind of little knocking noise, which is amplified by the chamber of the ball, the shell. So all you do is you open your Powerball up and you invert the cavity ring, because they're both removable. The older models, the actual shells used to, the platform of the shell basically was the cavity ring, but now we have these removable cavity rings so that you can actually just invert them and you have a sort of a brand new Powerball in there. You know, the knocking noise is gone. Now, as long as, of course, you invert them with the caution that I'm doing here, that you actually use this tissue arrangement to make sure you never touch these rings. This is the kind of white glove job. Ironically, I made a video outside just about a few weeks back where I was showing how to do this wearing rubber gloves, and then I just changed my mind, because the rubber glove, it can have a sort of a, well, whatever way the nitrile is made, it's possible that it can have a slight contamination on it, which you know, could skew your results. Tissue is the man. Tissue is the only sort of solution that you need here. And if you just, everybody has some toilet paper. So the isopropyl alcohol, of course, it's kind of important. You can use, I suppose, rubbing alcohol is what this is, but isopropyl is pretty much 100% pure alcohol. Would you use whiskey or vodka or gin? You could if you're stuck, I suppose, but ideally you don't want any impurities. You just want absolutely pure alcohol on this. It does the best job. So I'm giving this a good vigorous cleaning, as you can see. And pretty much done that twice. And again, a single sheet just to dry it off. And shortly we're going to have two perfectly clean cavity rings. Okay, that's the second one. And the final piece of the puzzle, the rotor itself. Now, as you can see, there's a band, a little rotor support band going the whole way around that rotor, and it basically that integrates with the cavity rings. Sort of it's the friction is created by the relationship that those two components have with each other, and as so long as the plastic is absolutely spot on, pristine, clean on both, then, you're never going to have an issue. Now, you don't have to take this rotor support band off. You can actually clean it on site, in other words, on the rotor. But again, make sure you're cleaning the top and bottom part of that. There's, as I say, you'll see it when you take this apart. You'll see it's kind of almost T-shaped. So you're basically making sure you're getting the upper and lower section. You're absolutely making sure that you're wiping down every part of that rotor support band, because, as I say, that's key to ensure that whatever it is, and you know, I can't answer you what it is. It's ironic. We've sold a lot of Powerballs around the world over the last 20 years. And it can happen with a brand new Powerball just as easily as it can happen with a Powerball that's been used for a number of years. You're using your brand new Powerball, it could be just a day or two old, and it suddenly stops working. You can't get it to spin. You were doing great the day before, and suddenly nothing, no resistance. And what has happened is something has gotten in there and contaminated one of these surfaces. And in so doing, it's disrupted that beautiful frictional relationship that the rotor support band has with the cavity rings, and the Powerball is kiboshed. And thus, the requirement to know how to clean it. You might never have to do it, but if you're watching this video, I'm guessing that you're in the predicament, or that we've directed you, you've contacted us telling us about this, and we've shown you this video because it's a very important video. I know it's going on for longer than I had hoped, but it's immaterial. You can follow me along as with your own Powerball as you're doing it there. But as I say to you, I promise you, because I've actually had several. Now we've had several Powerballs sent back to us over the years, many of them. You know, where customers have said, "Look, you know, what's wrong with my Powerball? Like I've tried to clean it, and And we take it apart and we do what I'm doing here. And it actually always works. You know, the Powerball comes back to us with that sort of slipping issue. And when we do what we're doing here, Powerball is always perfect afterwards. But you must not touch the components with your fingers. You know, it's funny, even if you wash your fingers and you've gotten rid of all the hand surface oil, it still is enough to screw it up. If you've touched those rings in any way with your fingers, I'm not saying, well, maybe not always, but you don't want to go through this process and find that you have to do it all again because you've just touched a little part, and it just shows something about the intricacy and the precision of the products. Because I mean, you know, you're dealing with something that can reach 280 revolutions a second, powered only by your hand, or higher even actually. So you know, you can just imagine what's going on in terms of precision and the balancing to achieve those sort of figures. Okay, I think we're good. We're good to go. Get rid of all the residue tissue. Don't want any of that getting in there. But there's another thing: human hairs and detritus, like dust. And if you're in a really dusty environment, it can cause similar effects, I guess. Not as bad as the moisturizer. I think obviously it's hand balm or something that gets on there that causes the slipping. Dust doesn't really do it. I mean, if we've seen a few cases where hair has managed to get inside, or we've actually seen cases where little sort of hair or tiny little plastic strings, or we're talking microscopic levels here, are wound around the rotor at the tip, as if it's picked up something from the operating environment, and as it spins, it's wound around 1,000 times. And you know, you have to take off this rotor support band. It's actually quite easy to do. It just generally lifts. You just literally catch it and you pull it out. From there, watching, there's 2 washers on each side. You pull it out and you lift it and you sort of bend it over the rotor. I'm not going to do it here. It's not necessary to do it. Nothing springs out or nothing flies out, just those washers. Just watch out for those. But, you know, if you need to do that, just if there's something wound around the tip, the axle tip, then that's what you need to do. But it's a fairly straightforward process to do it. But as I say, in this instance, this video, I'm just showing you how to clean this. And as I say, we do it properly. We do it twice and then we dry it all off. And there you go. So take the shell half here. We've already fitted the cavity ring in there. Drop the nice clean rotor back in there. Taking your piece of tissue, lift and drop in the other ring so that it sits in there nicely. So that's it. It all just sits in there, minds its own business. Ready for the second part of the shell to be put back in. So, and that's all happens is that it just clips back, line up the 2 halves together, press them down gently, going all the way around, making sure all of the tabs are in place. Everything is where it should be. Get your little screws, put them back in. Tricky little beggars, actually. There you go. And the grip band, of course, just it goes on. We always like to sort of put the function button in the middle of the sort of where the W and the E of the grip band is. Thereabouts. So there's a little bit of symmetry. Slide it on. Actually, it's not a bad idea to give the grip band a wash once you have it off. It'll wash in warm soapy water if you want to give the shell itself. Actually, I probably should have said that to you. If you want to give the shell a little clean and wipe down as well. Again, no solvents, just nice soapy water basically. Or well, you probably could use the tissue and the alcohol on the shell, because no point in getting that wet, especially when the counter is sitting on top if you have one of the Pro models. You can take the counter off, of course. The counter just lifts off. It's actually held by little tabs on both sides. And there you go. Your Powerball is all nice and clean and ready for action. Okay, the moment of truth. So I've cleaned the Powerball that I have now in my hand. When I got it, it was back from a customer who had said that it had stopped functioning. And when we got it, sure enough, it was slipping. So I've just gone through that process that you've seen there. I'm winding it up. And it should, if I've done it right, and I did it right, yeah, it has that satisfying bite, as we like to say. It's got that lovely sort of frictional relationship is back. And you can hear it responding in kind to my wrist rotation. Perfect. So that's a Powerball that was, as I say, our customer couldn't get it to start. They sent it back to us. This video tutorial will actually show a lot of you how to do what we do here. It's very simple, as you see: tissue paper, alcohol, a couple of screwdrivers, a little bit of patience and time. But as I say, your Powerball is a very important part of your daily routine. If you're suffering from any form of RSI, or if you want strengthening or endurance in your upper limbs. So, you know, I hope that you'll actually want to keep it in tip-top condition, because it's going to last you for a long time. As I say, we've done tests on our Powerballs for 20 million revolutions and open them up, and there's no wear of any description, nothing. So as long as your technique is good, as long as you always grab your Powerball firmly as you spin it, and these things will last you a lifetime. And knowing how to open and clean them, because as I say, you know, it mightn't be you, you might give it a loan to somebody and they might have greasy hands, whatever. As I say, I can't tell you what it is that does this to the customer's Powerball, because, you know, perhaps somebody's been massaging some muscle balm onto their forearms just before they use their Powerball, because that's why they bought the Powerball, to rehabilitate an RSI injury or whatever. But it gets inside, it gets onto the rotor, gets inside, interferes with the perfect friction relationship, and Powerball is worthless. It needs to be cleaned. And as I say, you now see how to clean it, so you should be able to do that, as I say, going forward, and do it as often as you like. The more, maybe every 6 months, probably is a good idea to actually do it. But if you have any questions after watching this video, if you want to reach out to us or get in touch, then get us on info@rpmpower.com or info@powerballs.com. We'll always be happy to answer your questions and help out in whatever way we can. I hope you found the video useful, and thank you very much for watching.